Welcome back, everyone. We're now going to be tackling a pretty tough subject that often goes underreported, both in the news media and even from its victims. Now, I'm talking about rape, and more specifically, rape for youth. Now, in just a few minutes, you're going to be hearing from some experts who say it's much more common among young teens than a lot of people think. Not just the victims, but also the perpetrators. They say the glamorization of sex and violence in the media, it's created what they call a rape culture that is influencing our teens much more than we'd like to think. Now, what has brought this issue to the forefront? It's a story that you've seen in the dailies. 4 boys from our region, ages 12 and 13, charged with raping 2 girls, ages 12 and 14, over a 3-day period inside girls' homes in Westchester County, in Rockland County, excuse me. Our reporter, Kim Lengel, she joins us now with the details on that. Kim?
Yeah, Rich, and a prosecutor reportedly said during the hearing in family court, if an adult had committed these crimes, they would be in jail. Now, the 4 boys pleaded not guilty. They are charged as juvenile delinquents with first-degree rape and several other sex offenses. 4 male students from Chestnut Ridge Middle School, ages 12 and 13, have been released to house arrest after serving time in a detention center. They're accused of sexually abusing 2 girls, ages 12 and 14. According to published reports of the court hearing, the prosecutor called the case the worst that I've seen in my life. The judge who heard the case in Rockland County Family Court banned the boys from using social media. No Facebook, no cell phones, no computers. The judge also ordered no contact between the suspects and the victims. According to reports published by the Journal News, 2 of the 4 suspects came uninvited to the victim's home June 11th, climbing through a window. They then began sexually pursuing the 14-year-old. The next day, according to the Journal News, all 4 suspects climbed through the window and locked the 14-year-old in her bedroom, 2 pinning her down and 1 standing guard, while the 4th raped her. The following day, the suspects returned. According to reports from the Journal News, the boys tied up the 12-year-old and attempted to rape her. Now, the judge can sentence the boys to 14 months in juvenile detention to up to 3 years. Rich? All
right, Kim. Let's bring in our guest right now who can speak to this. This to us might be shocking, but for them, they deal with this reality. And they're going to be talking about the issue of sexual assault on young girls. 2 representatives of the Rockland Family Shelter, a privately run organization dedicated to ending violence against women, children, and youth. And we're joined by the organization's executive director, Carolyn Fish, and its director of education, Laura Plotkin. Thank you both very much. Now, I'll admit, even though Kim and I may see these numbers or may see these stories more frequently because of our vocation, some of the numbers that I saw shocked the heck out of me. 1 in 4 women will be raped before the age of 18, and then 80% of the time the victims of these youthful victims will only tell their friends and not their parents, and you have a problem, a terrible problem, only compounded because they either don't understand it or they don't know who to go to. Would people at home be shocked just how many kids we're really talking about, and not just something on the margins here, but we're talking about rape?
Absolutely. So if this were, 1 in 4 young women developing an illness or a disease, this would be a public health crisis. But unfortunately, the issue of rape, the crime of rape, is really an underreported crime. So when we say that 1 in 4 young women are victims of rape, that's only the ones that are actually reported. We see the ones that are in the news because they are picked up by news sources, but this happens every day. Rape happens every 2 minutes in the United States. So this is a major public health crisis in itself. It can lead to depression, it can lead to eating disorders, self-esteem, and other health issues. And
one of the things is the kids in this particular case that we're talking about, ranging in ages of 12 to 14, perpetrators are kids too. That, to me at least, surprised me. And while the media can be a scapegoat, you say it definitely plays a role here, and it's because of a culture, almost a rape culture that exists. Am I right?
Well, it's more than just media. I mean, media is only one part of it. We really live in a culture. We live in a society, not just in the United States, actually around the globe, where it's socially acceptable for women to be dominated, for men to control and dominate women. It's historically rooted in all of our laws.
But you're saying these kids also, from what I read, are getting bombarded, whether it's the video games they
there's
play,
no
whether it's the shows they watch,
It's a
the
bigger
video,
issue,
the music they listen to, right?
It's all part of it. We have to remember that they're being bombarded by that, and at the same time, there's this acceptance, jokes about women, how women look, objectification of women, so women don't become human. Women are something to toy with, to play with.
What blew me away, I don't know about you, Kim, was in one of the other numbers, 85% of the victims know their attacker.
Absolutely.
These kids came back 3 straight nights.
Yeah. And Carolyn, talk about the common thread in sexual assault, because it ends up being Facebook, it ends up being texting, sexting. And we're finding out, I talked to several prosecutors today that said in many of the cases that they deal with, they find out that the suspects are texting before and after the assaults.
You know, what has changed for youngsters today is all the social networking and all the social media, which compounds the initial sexual assault. In my era, someone was sexually assaulted, it was bad enough. And many women who were my age who were sexually assaulted at fraternity parties, that comes from, you know, 40, 50 years ago, these things. It was a very different issue. It was more private. Many women didn't share those things till 10, 20 years later. Well, because it was so humiliating. Today, it's out there, whether or not the victim wants to tell anybody.
You know, this person, this is the chief prosecutor for Rockland's SVU, Special Victims Unit, who said, what we find is that technology is playing a role in nearly every case we see with teens. She went on to say, kids feel less of a sense of accountability to each other personally because relationships are so based on electronic devices or other media. It is, I think, a new reality we're seeing. What does she mean?
Well, absolutely. I mean, technology isn't just part of teenagers' lives, it is their life. Now when they talk to their friends, instead of picking up a phone to call them, they pick up their phone to text them. And it makes it incredibly easy to be a bully or to perpetrate a crime when you're sitting 5 miles away from that person on a computer.
Because these girls apparently were victimized twice, not just the horrible assault, but then, well, you know this case, they then went, the perpetrators, the attackers, went public and posted on Facebook. So these girls didn't even get to have anonymity. They were victimized yet again.
And that's where it comes in, that re-victimization. So it's not even fair that this crime happened once. Now they have to relive it and be harassed by the friends of the perpetrators. They have to be teased by other people and almost blamed for this crime that has happened to them because it's playing out on Facebook and Twitter and all these other forms of social media.
You know, there's an obvious question, I think, that people at home who aren't as familiar with this case is the parents. And I guess one of the things is they went into these people's homes for 3 straight nights. And rather than getting into the specific facts of this case, a lot of times you got single parents. A lot of times you got both parents who got to work in this economy right now. And you compound that by the fact that only until after the 3rd night, when allegedly one of the victim's friends says, I'm going to go to your parents unless you tell them, did they finally tell the parents this was happening? And as a parent of kids here, that's the part that, you know, almost got up to here. Your job is to protect your kids, but your kids aren't even talking to you. And I guess there might be some self-blame that you created an environment that they were alone. I mean, I can only imagine, you deal with this stuff, guys, some of the conversations after the fact that you must have to hear and endure from the kids and their families.
The unfortunate reality is that oftentimes teenagers don't tell their parents when a sexual assault occurs. Well, there's a lot of shame involved in a sexual assault. I mean, imagine how hard it was as a teenager to talk to your parents about sex. Now imagine having to tell them that you were sexually assaulted. I mean, that's an incredibly private, intimate conversation. You might be afraid that your parents are going to blame you or that they're going to punish you for this crime. You don't know how their reaction will be. So it's an incredibly difficult situation, and it's not surprising that a student or a young person wouldn't tell their parents because according to research, only half of all students will tell anyone, and of those half, 80% actually will tell a friend before they go to a parent or an adult.
Now, you know, sexual assault has nothing to do with sex. The motivation behind it is to control and humiliate and dominate. Now, that's not what someone will tell you who's committing such an act, but that's what it's about.
Well, you just said something important, and unfortunately, the reality of TV is one thing we don't have is time, but There is so much misinformation, so much information the kids don't have. Some of the economic realities play into this, where you don't have funding like you used to go into schools and explain this, but you all agree one of the most critical steps is to at least have an open conversation and a real dialogue with the kids, their families, so that, God forbid, some of the situations approach, let alone happen, at least they can reach out and get the help that they need here. But we're going to be linking to our site sources where you can go to find out more information. And I definitely think if you're a parent out there, at least have this conversation with the kids and explain to them that they are, you are who they should be talking to first and foremost. But ladies, thank you very much. And hopefully we'll have more conversations on this in the near future. Kim, as always.